I see you, I appreciate you, and I'm thankful you subscribed and keep showing up. This space is built on your insights. Leave your thoughts and lessons below. Now, cue the tension, cue the truth. Let's get into it. Before you listen, I want to name the moment in this story where everything is actually decided. It is not the affair. It is not even an insult. It is the sentence that tries to rewrite reality. If you can't handle it, leave. When someone frames a betrayal as your weakness, that is not honesty. It is a power move. The practical takeaway is simple. When a person dares you to abandon your dignity, do not argue your way back into their respect. You won't earn it. You choose it. Now, let me tell you how I learned that the hard way. If you've ever had someone betray you and then tell you it was your fault for feeling hurt, stay with me. Because what Vaughn does next isn't loud, it's smart. And it changes everything. Before we get deeper, if you believe respect is non-negotiable, share this with someone who needs that reminder, and subscribe for more first-person drama stories that hit real. My wife, Nadia, said it like she was reading a menu. We were in our townhouse in Milwaukee, the living room lamp buzzing because the bulb was dying and I kept forgetting to replace it. She stood by the mantel, one hand on her hip, the other holding her phone like it was a shield. "I'm sleeping with your friends," she said. "If you can't handle it, leave. They're real men." Her voice stayed calm, like the calm made it true. My throat tightened, but my face didn't move. I remember the sound of the furnace clicking behind us, that soft whoosh that always made the place feel safe in winter. It felt wrong that the house kept doing its job while my marriage fell apart. Nadia's nails were freshly done, a pale color that made her hands look expensive. She stared at me like I was something she had already replaced. I looked past her at our wedding photo, us laughing in July heat, then back at her, trying to understand how a person becomes a stranger without leaving. My name is Vaughn Ellis. I was 36 then, a city bus mechanic for Milwaukee County Transit. The kind of job that leaves your hands smelling like metal and brake cleaner, no matter how long you wash. I liked work because machines had rules. If something was broken, you could trace it. You could fix it. People were harder. I had a quiet habit of restoring old tabletop radios, the kind with warm dials and cloth speaker fronts, because I liked how patience could bring sound back. Nadia was 34, a project coordinator for a hospital network, always in meetings, always in motion. She organized everything, group trips, family birthdays, our savings spreadsheet, until she didn't. For a long time, I told myself her sharp edges were just stress. When we met at a community volunteer event, she was the first woman who made me feel like being steady was a strength. She said she liked that I listened. She said I made her feel grounded. I built my whole idea of us around that. After she said it, I didn't yell. That's what she expected, I think. She expected a scene she could later describe as proof I was unstable. Instead, I walked to the kitchen, opened a drawer, and took out the little notebook where I wrote down part numbers and radio tube types. I stared at my own handwriting like it belonged to someone else. Nadia followed me and said, "Don't act like a victim." The words hit harder than the confession. I felt embarrassed for still caring about her opinion. Which friends? I asked, because my brain wanted specifics the way my hands wanted torque specs. Nadia's smile was thin. "You know," she said, "Jeremiah, Leon, Curtis. 3 names from my life that should have been safe. Jeremiah was my friend from trade school, the one who brought sweet potato pie to my mother's house every Thanksgiving. Leon worked with me sometimes on weekend side jobs. Curtis went to my church, sat 2 rows behind me, sang louder than anybody. My stomach turned, but I kept standing. I should tell you what I did in that moment, because it mattered later. I decided not to call them. I decided not to drive to anyone's house. I decided not to reach for my phone, like it could patch my pride. Instead, I went upstairs and sat on the edge of our bed and looked at the quilt my aunt made us as a wedding gift. The quilt had little stitched radios in one corner, because Nadia told my aunt I loved them. That detail hurt more than the insult. She knew me. She still did this. Nadia stayed downstairs, playing something on her phone with the volume low, like she didn't want the neighbors to hear her life. I heard her laugh once, one quick burst. then silence. It wasn't a happy laugh. It was a laugh people use to prove they're not afraid. I sat there imagining her with them and had to stop, because the images made my chest feel too tight. I stood up and opened the closet, and pulled out a duffel bag I used for work boots. That was the first decision point. I could have packed and left that night. I almost did. My hand was on my folded sweatshirt when I pictured my mother's face if I showed up at her house at midnight with a bag. She would ask questions with her eyes before her mouth even opened. I wasn't ready to answer, so I did something smaller. I packed the essentials, 2 changes of clothes, my toiletry, my radio notebook, and I put the bag back. I chose to sleep on the couch instead of leaving. Nadia came upstairs around 1 a.m. She looked at me on the couch and said, "Are you still here?" Like I was an inconvenience. I said, "I live here." She shrugged and went into our bedroom and shut the door. The latch clicked, a small sound that carried like a slap. I stared at the ceiling fan and counted the rotations the way I used to count passing streetlights on night drives. I didn't sleep much. When dawn came, the sky looked gray and blunt, like it had no patience. At work, I kept my head down. The bus barn smelled like diesel and coffee and winter coats drying. My co-worker Reggie asked if I was coming to lunch at the diner on Fond du Lac Avenue. I told him I already ate. That was a lie. I couldn't swallow. My hands kept slipping on the tools because they were sweaty. I tightened the bolts too hard, then loosened them and started over. Machines at least did not pretend. They didn't tell you were the problem when they were leaking. I didn't tell anyone at first. Not my mother. Not my older sister, Portia, who always knew something was wrong before I said it. I didn't tell my pastor, not because I didn't trust him, but because I did want my pain turned into a prayer request that traveled to the congregation like gossip dressed in scripture. That was another choice. Silence felt like control. It wasn't. It was just loneliness with better posture. I went home after work, and Nadia wasn't there. She came home late smelling like a hotel lobby. Clean, expensive, not like her usual citrus lotion. She walked past me and tossed her keys into a bowl. "We need ground rules," she said, like we were negotiating roommates. I stared at her and asked, "Do you hear yourself?" Nadia rolled her eyes. "Vaughn, don't get dramatic," she said. "You never had that in you anyway." The way she said it wasn't about sex. It was about shrinking me down until I fit inside her story. "I'm not staying in this," I said, and I meant in a foggy way, like a person pointing to the horizon without knowing the route. Nadia's eyebrows lifted. "Then go," she said. "I'll be fine." That word, fine, was a threat. She wanted me to believe she didn't need me, so that I would beg to be needed. I didn't beg. I went to the bathroom and stared at my face in the mirror. My eyes looked older than yesterday. I practiced breathing until my hands stopped shaking. The next Saturday, we had the church fish fry. Our church did it every winter, a fundraiser with battered cod, hot sauce, and a line that wrapped around the fellowship hall. I usually worked the fryer with the men, apron tied, laughing through the steam. That day, I stood behind the serving table and watched Curtis, my friend, helping set up chairs like nothing had changed. He looked at me and smiled. "Good to see you, brother," he said. His voice was warm. My skin went cold. I could have confronted him right there, in front of the aluminum trays and the church ladies. I didn't. I told myself I needed certainty, not suspicion. But Nadia had said his name. That was enough. Curtis leaned closer and said, "Nadia's been busy. You doing all right?" His concern sounded rehearsed. I nodded and said, "I'm good." That was another lie. When he walked away, I watched his shoulders. He moved like a man who thought he had gotten away with something. That night, Nadia posted a photo of herself in a sleek black dress at a downtown restaurant. No caption about me, just her. The comments were full of heart emojis and gorgeous and goals. I sat at the kitchen table with my radio part spread out, trying to focus on a crackling Philco I'd been restoring. I soldered a connection wrong, burned my finger, and didn't even flinch. The pain felt clean compared to humiliation. Nadia came in and saw my bandage and didn't ask what happened. I started noticing patterns. She went to meet girlfriends, but came back with her hair slightly different, like someone had touched it. She started buying cologne I never wore, leaving it in the guest bathroom. She took phone calls on the porch even when it was freezing. When I walked into a room, she turned her screen down. I didn't spy. I didn't install anything. I didn't want to become the kind of man who lived in hidden corners. Instead, I wrote down what I observed in my notebook, the way I logged symptoms on buses. One evening, Jeremiah called me and asked if I could help him move a couch. His voice sounded too cheerful. I told him I was busy. He laughed and said, "You're always busy these days." Then, softer, "You and Nadia all right?" I felt my jaw clench. I said, "Why?" There was a pause, like he was searching for safe words. "No reason," he said. "Just checking." After we hung up, I stared at my phone like it had betrayed me too. I knew then the poison had reached my friendships. The second decision point came when Portia showed up at my house unannounced with a casserole, and a look that meant she'd already decided to tell the truth. She hugged me and whispered, "Baby brother, what's going on?" I could have brushed her off. I could have protected Nadia's image. I didn't. I told Portia everything, from Nadia's words to the names. My sister didn't gasp. She didn't dramatize. She just sat very still, then said, "So she's trying to break your backbone and call it love." Portia asked me what I wanted. I said I wanted my life back. She nodded. "Then you need a plan that's about you, not her," she said. She helped me call a counselor the next morning, a black male therapist in Wauwatosa, who specialized in grief and betrayal. Sitting in that waiting room felt like admitting defeat, but it was the opposite. It was me choosing reality. In my first session, I said, "I feel ashamed, like I must have failed." The therapist said, "Her choices are not your report card." Nadia noticed a change in me before I even told her. When I stopped asking where she was, she got suspicious. When I stopped trying to talk it out, she got louder. She cornered me in the hallway and said, "So you're just going to sulk?" I said, "I'm not sulking. I'm adjusting." That word irritated her. She wanted tears. She wanted rage. She wanted me to act so she could point and say, "See? He's weak." Instead, I started cooking for myself, going to gym, keeping my routines like they were railings. The counselor asked me to stop focusing on what Nadia was doing and start focusing on what I was tolerating. That was hard. It's easy to stare at someone else's sins in your own fear. I realized I had been afraid of being alone. Not lonely, alone. Like if she left, my life would be an empty house with echoing rooms. So I made myself practice solitude. I went to a small jazz night at a cafe on the east side by myself and sat near the back with a ginger tea. I listened to the saxophone and let myself breathe. Meanwhile, Nadia kept escalating. She started leaving little comments like landmines. "Leon understands ambition," she said one morning while buttering toast. "Curtis prays with me," she said, like faith was a flirtation tool. I didn't react. I wrote it down and took my plate to the sink. She slammed a cabinet and said, "You're acting like you're better than me." I turned and said, "I'm acting like I'm done being humiliated in my own home." Her face flashed with anger, then something else, fear. It was a first crack in her confidence. One Sunday after service, Curtis approached me in the parking lot while snow fell in soft flakes. He said, "You've been distant." I looked at him and said, "Tell me the truth." Curtis blinked fast. "About what?" he asked too quickly. I said, "About Nadia." His shoulders stiffened. He tried to smile. "Man, don't start," he said. That was the moment I knew. Innocent people don't say, "Don't start." They say, "What are you talking about?" I walked away without yelling, but my legs felt weak like I'd run stairs. That night I told Nadia, "I know." She leaned against the counter like she was bored. "Know what?" she asked. I didn't give her the satisfaction of explaining my heartbreak. I said, "I'm meeting with a lawyer this week." Her eyes narrowed. "You don't have the nerve," she said. I surprised myself by laughing once, not from humor, but from clarity. "You really don't know me," I said. Nadia's voice sharpened. "You're not taking anything from me." I said, I'm not talking. I'm leaving. I met with a lawyer downtown, an older black woman named Marlene Fitch, who spoke in clean sentences and didn't let me spiral. She asked practical questions. Any kids? No. Any shared debts? Some. House in both names? Yes. Any evidence? I told her I didn't want to become a detective in my own marriage. Marlene nodded. You don't need courtroom drama to set a boundary, she said, but you do need documentation for finances. She gave me a list: bank statements, mortgage paperwork, retirement accounts, credit cards. I left her office feeling like my feet were on the pavement again. Nadia tried to charm me after that. It was strange to watch. She cooked my favorite meal, smothered turkey wings and rice, then acted like we were fine. She said, "You've been so stressed. Let's go away for a weekend." I asked, "Is that before or after you see my friends?" Nadia's smile disappeared. "So you're going to punish me forever," she said. I said, "No, I'm going to protect myself now." She pushed her plate away like a child. "You're making this bigger than it is," she whispered. That whisper was a lie she was trying to sell herself. Around this time, Jeremiah stopped responding to my texts. Leon avoided me at work sites. Curtis stopped coming around our house. People like to talk about betrayal like it's private, but it spreads. It changes the air in rooms. At the barbershop on North Avenue, my barber, Darnell, said, "You good?" without looking up from the clippers. Men ask that question when they already know something. I nodded. Darnell said, "Whatever it is, don't let it make you ugly." That stuck with me. Nadia's social circle started shifting too. She spent more time with women who liked to call everything energy and vibes, women who applauded selfishness as self-care. One of them, a woman named Rochelle, came to our house once and looked at me like I was furniture. Rochelle said, "Nadia deserves to feel desired." I said, "Desire doesn't require disrespect." Rochelle laughed like I told a joke. After she left, Nadia said, "See? That's why they like you. You're safe. Safe, like a box with no lock." I went upstairs and sat in my workshop corner and turned a radio dial until it found a station playing an old gospel song. I began sleeping in the guest room. I bought new sheets, gray ones, and it felt like claiming territory. Nadia made a point of walking past the guest room door in her robe, perfume loud, like she wanted to chase her. I didn't. Instead, I filled my evenings. Therapy on Tuesdays. Gym on Thursdays. Saturday mornings at the public library with my laptop, reviewing my finances. It wasn't glamorous, but it was steady. The most surprising part was that my sadness started changing. It became less like drowning and more like something that came and went without controlling me. Nadia grew angry about my calm. She wanted me frantically. She wanted proof I couldn't survive without her. One night, she slammed her phone down and said, "You think you can just replace me?" I said, "This isn't about replacing. This is about leaving something that is damaging me." She sneered. "So now you're a victim," she said. I almost said, "No, you're just cruel," but I stopped. Cruelty didn't need my commentary. I said, "I'm filing next month." Nadia stared at me like she was seeing consequences for the first time. The day I filed, it was early spring and the snow had finally started to melt into dirty piles along the curb. I took a deep breath in the courthouse hallway and felt my heart pounding like it wanted to run. I thought about backing out. I thought about going home and pretending. Then I pictured my future if I stayed, years of small humiliations, my self-respect slowly thinning. I signed the papers. My hand shook, but I signed. When I walked outside, the air felt sharp and clean. Not happy, just honest. Nadia reacted in stages. First, disbelief. She called me at work and said, "You're not serious." Then anger. "You're ruining our lives." Then bargaining. "We could do counseling." I said, "I've been in counseling. You've been performing." She cried, real tears this time, and I felt something twist in me, not because I wanted her back, but because I remembered the version of her who used to hold my hand in crowded places. Grief is confusing that way. It doesn't honor timelines. It just arrived. The friend group fractured. Portia confronted Jeremiah at a family cookout and asked him straight, "Did you sleep with my brother's wife?" Jeremiah denied it, eyes darting. Portia said, "You can lie to yourself, but don't lie to me." After that, Jeremiah stopped. Coming around, Leon transferred to a different crew. Curtis changed churches. People acted like I was the reason things were uncomfortable, like my refusal to accept betrayal was a disruption, not the betrayal itself. That is one of the sneakiest harms of disrespect. It makes you feel like setting a boundary is being difficult. Nadia moved out 2 months later, after she realized I wasn't cooling off. She took her clothes, her shoes, her favorite mirror with the gold frame. She left behind a box of Christmas ornaments and the waffle maker she never used. The house felt emptier, but also quieter, like a television had finally been turned down. The first night alone, I sat on the living room floor and let myself cry. I cried for the marriage I thought I had. I cried for the man I was when I believed love could be earned by patience alone. Then I got up and replaced the buzzing lamp bulb. Divorce is not one event. It is paperwork, yes, but it is also 100 tiny moments. It is seeing her handwriting on an old grocery list and feeling your stomach drop. It is hearing a song in the supermarket and suddenly being in the past. It is meeting someone's eyes at church and wondering what they know. I kept going. I kept eating, even when food tasted flat. I kept going to therapy. I kept fixing radios. Each time a restored radio crackled to life, I felt like it was telling me, quietly, that sound would return after silence. Nadia tried to pull me back with nostalgia. She sent texts, photos from our honeymoon in Chicago, a screenshot of a playlist titled Us. I didn't respond. When she called, I let it go to voicemail. In therapy, my counselor asked, "What do you owe her?" I said, "Nothing." He said, "What do you owe yourself?" That question stayed. I owed myself peace. I owed myself a home that didn't feel like a stage for someone else's power. So I started making my life mine again. I repainted the guest room a deep blue. I hung a framed picture of my late father in the hallway. The court process dragged on. Nadia contested the house, even though we both paid. She suddenly remembered every grocery run she ever made, every bill she ever covered, as if tallying could erase cruelty. At mediation, she sat across from me in a cream suit and said, "I deserve respect." I looked at the mediator and said, "Respect is not something you demand after you throw it away." Nadia's eyes flashed. "So you're perfect," she snapped. I said, "No, I'm just finished pretending this is normal." The mediator cleared her throat and kept us on numbers. It was surreal. Our marriage reduced to spreadsheets and deadlines, but it was also clarifying. One thing I didn't expect was how lonely weekends got. Weekdays were work and routine. Saturdays used to be errands with Nadia, brunch, sometimes a movie. Now Saturdays were open space, and open space can echo. So I volunteered again the way I did when I met her. But this time for me, I joined a community workshop that taught teenagers basic electrical skills. On Saturdays, I showed them how to strip wire properly, how to respect tools, and how to take pride in small fixes. There was a boy named Malcolm who reminded me of myself. Quiet, observant, hungry for stability. Teaching him felt like planting something in the ground that didn't move. Nadia's real men started looking less real when consequences arrived. Curtis's wife, yes, he had a wife, showed up at my sister's house one evening, eyes swollen from crying, and asked if I knew anything. Portia told her the truth as gently as she could. That marriage fractured, too. Jeremiah lost a promotion at his job after his supervisor heard rumors and decided he was unreliable. Leon's girlfriend kicked him out. I didn't celebrate any of it. I didn't feel victorious. I felt tired. Watching other people's lives splinter didn't heal mine. It just confirmed how much damage selfishness can spread when it's treated like a game. Nadia tried to rewrite the story in public. She posted vague quotes about outgrowing people and choosing herself. She implied I was controlling, that I couldn't handle her confidence. Some people believe her because it's easier to believe a neat narrative than a messy truth. I kept quiet Not because I was ashamed, but because I didn't want to be in a war for strangers' opinions. Still, there were nights I stared at the ceiling and imagined defending myself with receipts and timelines. Then I remembered Darnell's warning, don't let it make you ugly. I chose privacy over proving. One afternoon in late summer, I ran into Nadia at a grocery store in Bayview. She had a basket with instant noodles and frozen vegetables, not the fancy stuff she used to buy. Her hair was pulled back tight, no makeup. She looked tired in a way that had nothing to do with sleep. Our eyes met near the produce section. She walked up like she wanted to own the moment. You look good, she said. I said, I'm all right. She swallowed, then said, they weren't worth it. The words came out small, not dramatic. For the first time, she sounded like a human being instead of a performer. Nadia asked if we could talk. I looked at her and felt the old reflex to fix things, to smooth discomfort, to rescue. I didn't. I said, we can talk in mediation. She flinched. So that's it, she said. I nodded. That's it. She stared at me like she was waiting for anger, and when she didn't get it, she looked lost. I walked away, bought my groceries, and sat in my car for a minute before driving off. My hands were steady on the steering wheel. That steadiness felt like a victory I didn't have to announce. The divorce finalized in October. Leaves were turning, streets lined with gold and rust colors, and the air had that crisp bite that makes you want to zip your jacket higher. I signed the final documents and felt a strange quiet settle in my chest, like a door closing slowly instead of slamming. When I got home, I made myself dinner, salmon, rice, broccoli, and ate at the table instead of standing by the sink. I turned on one of my restored radios and let it play softly. I didn't feel happy. I felt free. There's a difference. After the papers, I had to build a new social life. Some of my friends were gone forever. Some were never really mine. That hurt, but it also cleared space. I started going to a small coffee shop in Shorewood on Saturday mornings, the kind with mismatched chairs and a chalkboard menu. The barista, a black woman named Celine, always wore bright earrings and remembered people's names. She would ask, how's the radio project? Going, as if my hobby mattered. That kind of attention, simple, consistent, felt like medicine. I didn't date for a while. I wasn't interested in turning my grief into a rebound story. My therapist told me to learn what peace felt like before I tried to share my life again. So I learned. I took walks along Lake Michigan when the wind was strong enough to make your eyes water. I cooked more. I stopped skipping breakfast. I fixed my posture. I started saying no without apologizing. The smallest thing that surprised me was how my voice changed. Not louder, just firmer. Like my words finally believed they belonged in the room. In December, my mother invited me to her house for Sunday dinner. The whole family was there. Collard greens, cornbread, baked chicken, my uncle's jokes that never changed. My mother pulled me aside in the kitchen and said, I heard people talking. I didn't ask because I wanted you to tell me when you were ready. I swallowed hard. I'm divorced, I said. My mother touched my cheek with her warm hand and said, I'm sorry, baby. Then she added, but I'm proud you didn't stay where you weren't honored. That sentence landed in my bones. Nadia reached out again around New Year's. She left a voicemail. Her voice sounded thin. I know I hurt you, she said. I didn't understand what I was doing. I was chasing something. I don't even know what. I listened once, then deleted it. Not out of cruelty, out of clarity. I did not want to be the person she used to forgive herself. Forgiveness, I learned, is not the same as reconnection. I could release my resentment without reopening my life. That boundary felt grown. The next spring, I got promoted at the bus barn, led mechanic on a new fleet project, training younger techs, the kind of role that required calm and patience. It felt good to be trusted. At the celebration lunch, Reggie raised a soda and said, Tavon, man has been through it and still shows up. I smiled, grateful, and surprised by how much those words meant. Being seen by men who respected steadiness, real steadiness, not a performance, helped fill a place Nadia had hollowed out. I ran into Curtis again at a hardware store. He looked older, like stress had pulled his face downward. He started to speak, then stopped. I waited. He finally said, "I did wrong." I nodded. "Yes," I said. He swallowed. "I'm sorry," he said. His voice cracked. I believed he felt something, but I didn't feel the urge to comfort him. "Apologize to your wife," I said, "and to God, if that's real for you." Curtis blinked, then looked down. "It is," he whispered. I walked away. My heart didn't race afterward. That surprised me. I had been afraid confronting him would destroy me. It didn't. Leon texted once. "I hope you can forgive me." I didn't reply. Jeremiah tried to send a long message about mistakes and temptation. I didn't reply. If you betray someone, you don't get to demand the kind of closure that keeps you comfortable. I learned to accept that some people want forgiveness the way they want a receipt. Proof they paid for what they did. I wasn't running that store. I was running my life. That summer, the workshop kids built a small radio kit together. Malcolm brought his home and said, "My grandma cried when it turned on." He smiled so wide his whole face changed. I felt my throat tighten, not from sadness, but from something like purpose. When you're betrayed, it can make you feel like your presence doesn't matter, like people can use you and walk away. But watching a teenager hand his grandmother a sound he built with his own hands reminded me that what you do echoes. Not everybody is careless with what you give. Celine and I started talking more, not flirting at first, just talking. She told me she was finishing a master's program in library science and that she loved old mystery novels and hated people who played games with emotions. I told her about radios, about my father teaching me to use a screwdriver correctly, about the way a bus engine sounds when it's about to fail. She listened like she meant it. One rainy evening, she asked if I wanted to grab dinner after a shift. I paused, then said yes. It felt simple, which is what I wanted. Dating Celine was nothing like being with Nadia. Celine didn't test me. She didn't provoke me to prove something. If she had an issue, she said it plainly. If I needed space, she respected it. On our third date, she asked, "What happened in your marriage?" I took a breath and told her the truth without giving graphic details. Just the bones of it. Celine's face tightened and she said, "That's cruelty." Then she added, "You didn't deserve that." I didn't know how much I needed to hear that from someone who wasn't obligated to say it. Nadia popped up again through a mutual friend. Not directly. Portia told me Nadia was living in Madison now, working a different job, trying to start over. I felt nothing sharp, just a distant recognition, like seeing an old street you used to drive. That's the thing about leaving. At first, the loss is loud, like thunder. Later, it becomes whether you don't check as often. I hoped she was doing better, not because she earned my sympathy, but because I didn't want to carry her misery as a trophy. One night, Celine and I sat on my porch with iced tea while cicadas buzzed in the trees. She asked, "Do you ever worry you'll be blindsided again?" I thought about it. Sometimes, I said, but I'm not the same man I was. I won't ignore red flags to keep peace. Celine nodded. "That's not being guarded," she said. "That's being awake." Her words felt true. Nadia's line about real men used to haunt me. Now it sounded childish, like something someone says when they have nothing solid to offer. I saw Nadia one last time by accident at a rest stop off I-94 when I was driving to Chicago for a transit conference. I walked into a small convenience area and there she was, buying coffee, hair shortened before, eyes tired but steadier. She noticed me and froze. For a second, neither of us moved. Then she nodded once, small, respectful. I nodded back. No tears. No fight. No attempt to reopen anything. Just two people acknowledging a past that did not have to be relived. She walked away, and I felt grateful that I didn't chase the moment for meaning. The meaning had already been made. On the drive back, I thought about the night in the living room when she said, "If you can't handle it, leave." I realized something that surprised me. She had been right about one thing. Even though she meant it as an insult, I couldn't handle it. Not because I was weak, but because I refused to normalize disrespect. Some situations are not meant to be endured. They are meant to be exciting. That realization didn't make me bitter. It made me calmer. A year after the divorce, I stood in my workshop corner and switched on a radio I'd finished restoring, a heavy old Zenith with a warm dial. The station came in clear, a slow R&B song from decades ago, the kind my father used to hum while fixing things around the house. I sat down and listened without thinking of Nadia. That was the strangest part. My mind didn't automatically return to the wound. It just stayed with the music. Healing didn't arrive as a grand moment. It arrived as quiet, normal days piling up until my life belonged to me again. If Vaughn's quiet comeback hit you, where healing isn't a speech, it's a series of choices, then do me a favor. Like this video, share it with someone rebuilding their self-respect, and subscribe for more stories like this. And tell me in the comments, what was the exact moment you knew Vaughn was done? The living room line in paragraph 1, the courthouse decision, or that final nod at the rest stop? What I want you to take from this story is not be tough or get revenge. It's simpler and harder. When Nadia tried to humiliate me in my own living room, the turning point wasn't my anger. It was my refusal to negotiate my dignity. Two choices mattered. Telling my sister the truth instead of protecting a lie, and filing even when I wanted comfort more than clarity. If you're watching someone test how much disrespect you'll tolerate, don't focus on winning them back. Focus on whether you're losing yourself. The end.